as a team. Not sexy, not earth-shattering. They just get it done. So I think right now, as it stands, I think it's Kansas City's division to lose.
And I somewhat agree with you on that, even though I'm an Oakland fan. Brandon and I both get a vote in the Nuts and Bolts NFL Power Rankings. And you notice I've had Kansas City up high for the last few weeks, and I believe you have too. It's just hard to argue that they aren't the class of the division as much as I want to argue that it's Oakland. But I think the reaction to Oakland is, wow, it's been a long time since they've been this good, more than, wow, they're the best team in the division. Because Denver, you still can't count them out because their defense is so good, and they had a couple of injuries last night, so they weren't 100%. You can also argue that Oakland also had a couple of injuries on defense, but people would say, well, their defense stinks anyway, so I couldn't tell the difference. But no, I think that it's going to come down to a 3-team race. I think it's important for Oakland, as you said, to keep running the ball well, because you could end up with 2 wild card teams out of that division. Oakland needs to keep themselves in position for one of those wild card spots, just in case they don't win the division. So, they have the Texans coming into Oakland next. Then they have, my fault. The Texans-Raiders game, I believe, is in Mexico City. I don't think it's
right. Yeah, that game's in Mexico City.
Yeah, Oakland forfeited a home game for that one. And then they're home. They are actually home to the Panthers, home to the Bills. Then the game you mentioned, they go on short rest to Kansas City. That can become an abomination. Then they are at the Chargers. The Chargers are, it sounds so cliche, but they are so much better than their record. And then they're home to Indianapolis, and then they're at Denver. That's a tough road. But getting back to San Diego, do you agree with me? Don't you think that they're better than their record?
They are because you got to think, the last year their record was 4-12, but they lost a lot of games, a lot of close games that they lost a lot of close games last year. This year, they're still losing. I mean, they did lose a few. They did give up. They did have leads early on that they gave up, but they're still in it. I mean, they've already eclipsed the win total from last year at 4-5 with 7 games left to go. So you can't count out San Diego. If that offense is humming and the defense could just be competent. Nobody's expecting them to be great, but just be competent on defense. And they do have the tools on offense, and it seems like they have a running game now with Melvin Gordon. They could. I'm not saying they're going to win the division. I don't think they'll be a playoff team, but they could at the very least dictate who may make the playoffs or either who will make the playoffs, and most importantly, who ends up winning the AFC West. They got games against, and they have a fairly manageable schedule. Miami to Houston, at Houston, home for Tampa, at Carolina. They do get Oakland on the 18th, and then they close out against Cleveland, Kansas City. They just can't. Nobody. I put it to you like this, and I think I may have said it to you last week. Don't sleep on San Diego. If you have San Diego on the schedule, you can't sleep on them because they, believe it or not, they could put up points on it quick.
Oh yeah, they can. And I was joking around on Sunday, when someone talked about how Phillip Rivers is still playing so well after all this time, and I said, well, the struggle is real at home. He has 8 mouths to feed. I mean, good gracious, you can't slip. You got to stay on top of your game. I mean, you can't be unemployed. Nah. So, I mean, come on. The struggle is real. I don't know what
Yeah.
it's like when he
I,
gets home.
8 kids, and in San Diego County, I lived in I used to live in San Diego County when I was a young kid. We moved out to Florida because it was inexpensive. Man, 8 kids, and it was just my parents and 3 kids. Imagine with 8. Woo.
I know, right? So going back to Sunday in the games, was there a particular game that kind of jumped out at you in any sort of way? I know we had some exciting finishes with the Dolphins and the Jets, the Giants and the Eagles, the overtime game with the Lions and the Vikings. Was there something that stuck out with you from Sunday?
I think what stuck out for me was Pittsburgh and Baltimore, in how pretty much, and I wrote this on the Babel, I believe. I just don't know what Baltimore. I know what Pittsburgh's about. I mean, they're going to score points, and the defense is not going to be as good. And they just really struggled against the Baltimore team, which I can't put my identity. Like, who is Baltimore? I mean, the Baltimore teams that I remember of when they came from Cleveland, they're the first few incarnations of the Ravens. They were about offense, and then 2000, when the 2000s rolled around, they were all about their defense. Now, I don't get an identity from this team, and Baltimore getting that win, I guess, helps them out, keeping them alive in the playoff picture. I think Pittsburgh will be fine, or ideally. So that game sort of stuck out with me. And I think Ben just had a rough game. His first game back, I figure if he gets in sync with the rest of the offense, they should be okay. Another game that stuck out for me was also Jacksonville and Kansas City. Kansas City struggling against the bad Jacksonville team. I just have to throw Jacksonville in there because, it is November 7th, and Gus Bradley and Dave Caldwell are still employed. Don't ask me why. The Detroit, Minnesota is another game that stuck out because Minnesota was a Super Bowl contender back in September and October. What happened? Their offense just seems to be non-existent, and your defense can only carry them so far. Don't sleep on Detroit. I think, yes, they don't have Calvin Johnson, but I think they have something there. They could get something going. Matthew Stafford's playing really well. The defense is good enough, and also on the and staying in the division. I don't know what's happening with Green Bay. They just seem rudderless to me. Indy's not a great team, but Indy just outclassed them, outworked them, out-hustled them on Sunday in Lambeau. Green Bay just got a lot of things to work out. Maybe they're a playoff team, but they can't afford any more slip-ups. Otherwise, they could see themselves out the playoff picture.
Yeah, and that's the game that jumped out at me was Detroit and Minnesota. And I'm sitting here going back and forth, wondering if Detroit is the best team in the division and will eventually win it. Something that no one said back in September. And you're right. I'm one of these ones who had Minnesota picked before the season. Now, this is also before the Adrian Peterson injury. It's also before North Turner decided to pick up and quit. And then they give it to Pat Shurmur, who's got to be 100 years old. You're right. I think that Minnesota's kind of fallen off. And Detroit's playing so well. Matthew Stafford, I believe, has 4 comeback wins in the fourth quarter this season. Absolutely, positively killing the narrative that he is not clutch in the fourth and he doesn't have the ability to bring a team back. They don't have Calvin Johnson. On paper, they look rather average, yet they're showing everyone that by playing as a team and maybe by not having Calvin Johnson to depend on, everybody is raising their game. They're putting more effort maybe into how they're game planning and the way that they're game planning. And Jim Caldwell, frankly, is coaching for his job. There's new leadership in Detroit. There was no guarantee that they were going to give him this year. Now, they decided to, and it looked early on like Jim Caldwell was dead man walking. But I'm wondering what's going to happen if he makes the playoffs. If Detroit gets in the playoffs, and let's just say they lose in the first round, is that enough for Caldwell to keep his job? You see, it's going to be tough, even being a new GM, to say, yeah, that was nice making the playoffs, but I want to bring in my guy. Well, first of all, you have to make sure that you can get your guy, because a lot of teams have done that. Let me fire this person because I want to get my guy. Oh, what do you mean you don't want to come here? And now you're getting your third or fourth choice. Trust me, being a Raider fan, I'm used to seeing fourth and fifth choices being selected as coaches. And then people say, why'd they hire them? I mean, they were one step from hiring me. Nevertheless hire whoever they hired. So, yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to avoid that.
Yeah, I mean, so Detroit, that game certainly stuck out with me yesterday. So did Miami and New York. I'm starting to worry a little bit about Todd Bowles because you never know what they're going to do up there. The Jets are 3-6.
And by the way, Jay, I'm messing up his last name, Jay Ajayi. My God, that man's a revelation. I coming out of Boise State. He's a talented running back, but, his first few years been hampered by injuries, so you don't think, man, is he ever going to stay healthy enough to play? But, man, he's like the second coming of Eric Dickerson almost.
Yeah, and to think, at the beginning of the season, they didn't want to play him. Remember, he had gotten in trouble with management, and they kind of benched him the first couple of games. So, yeah, I mean, it looks like Miami has found something there. And Gaze really, really needed something because they're another team that was looking like it wasn't going to improve at all and that they were just going to be kind of the same old Dolphins. But their schedule coming up will show a lot. They're one of the teams that are stuck at 4-4. And when you look at their schedule, back-to-back road games on the West Coast. They're at the Chargers, at the Rams. They come home to the 49ers, winnable game. They travel to the Ravens. And I think that's where you're going to see where they're going to be. Because at 4-4, they have to win. They cannot lose both games on the West Coast. They have to win the San Francisco game. Then they have to find a way to beat Baltimore so they can be 3-1 in their next 4. I'm not sure if they can do that, but if they really want a realistic chance to make the playoffs, I feel like they're going to have to do that. Someone has to get in from the AFC South, unfortunately. So that's going to be Houston or Indianapolis or whomever. So that kind of puts a damper on the teams like Miami and Buffalo.
Right. And you can just, with the AFC South, nobody doesn't have to win that division. They could roll that over for the next year or two. You don't have to necessarily give that division to anybody because, you were talking about Houston sitting there 5-3. This same Houston team that got the doors blown off by New England on a Thursday night, and they just, while the defense is there, what do they have on offense? And, Brock Osweiler, really not living up to the, it was $72 million, but it was actually 36 guaranteed. I might be wrong on the numbers there, but yeah, you don't have to give that division to nobody from the AFC South the AFC South, you don't have to necessarily have a playoff team. It's almost like, you don't have to have that last slice of pie. You could just hold back, and wait, you can roll the AFC South over. My God, that division.
It stinks, my man. It stinks. So we're up against break. When we come back, we're going to talk about college football. Texas A&M. I mean, come on. You didn't even get to keep the